I've got this adobe hut and I want to make a brick pattern to kind of put on there so it looks like perhaps some of the adobe's falling off and the brick is behind it. So essentially we're going to make a pattern that is used in Photoshop for game environments and just 3D modeling in general. So I'm going to start by making a new document, a new file. And I'm going to choose inches. I'm going to make this, so I think I'll make it, I guess I'll make it 1 inch by 0.75 inches. And I'm going to make it 200 dpi. Resolution, all this stuff is contingent upon the purpose of the file, but we'll start with that. So I'm going to start with the color I would use for the grout. I'm going to grab a middle value gray. I'll hit Option Delete. And I want this to look like perhaps it might be some coarse cement that these blocks will be put together with. So I'm going to go to Filter, Noise, Add Noise. And I'm setting it for Gaussian and monochromatic. Again, this is all really very, very subjective, the amount you pick. I'm going to make it 5, and I'll click OK. Now, I'm going to get my wand tool because I can imply 3D content without actually creating all the complicated bump maps in Maya and in the 3D environment. So I'm going to drop my tolerance of my wand tool perhaps to 1. I'll click anywhere in the document, then I'll right-click and choose Similar. So you're going to see these marching ants all over the front of your document. Now, once I've got that, I want to copy and paste that content. You'll see that what you're left with is a very faint version of the entire file. So if I go to that new layer and I double-click and add my bevel and emboss, you can see that it's pretty easy to go in there and start to play with the settings in bevel and emboss to come up with a coarse surface. So I'll play with this a little bit. And again, it's really up to you, playing with the depth that you choose, the size. These are all things that you would take into consideration in pretty much a subjective environment. So if I wanted to as well, I'm going to put the outer glow on, and I'm going to drop the opacity. And this is just giving it more of a three-dimensional quality. All right, so perhaps I'll play with that a little bit, and then I'm simply going to click OK. So I've got this coarse grout that I want. Now, I'm going to leave all these files workable. I'm not going to merge anything down because I can always return and make adjustments. So I'm going to get my marquee, and I'm going to put a new layer in. And I think what I'll do is I'll determine how much of a grout line I want. And this is really, again, this is up to you. You can do it very subjectively by eye, or you can do it with incremental measurements. It's really, really up to you. The only reason that laying out these guides might be, as far as an advantage goes, is that you don't have to play around to match the texture too much. So now that I've got that, I'm going to split the whole document in half. So I'll find the middle ground for that. And again, I'm going to check to make sure that I've got this divided properly. Okay, so I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to get my marquee, and I'm going to select out with my guides. Now, another thing you may want to do is go to View, and then have Snap the Guides engaged, because it just makes it a lot easier to drag the shape you may want. All right, so I'm going to grab some colors. Again, this is all subjective. Again, it really is contingent upon your palette and what your needs are, but I'm going to go with, I think I'll go with some nice umbers here. So I'll start with the middle value brown, and I'm going to fill it. Once again, I'm going to go to Filter, Add Noise. I'll get my wand tool again. I'll select, go with Similar. I'll hit Command J. And I'm going through the same process pretty quickly here. It really is up to you, the settings. So I had pillow emboss. I'm going to go with inner bevel. Okay, so I get kind of a textural feel here. I'll click OK. And while I'm there, I want to introduce another color. So I'm going to lock the transparency. I'll go to my swatches and I'll get another brown. Maybe I'll throw a little bit of a cyan in there. So I'll get my brush. And I'm going to get my brush, and I think I'll drop to about 30%. And I guess I'll just zoom back a bit here. And I'm going to go in and I'm just going to start to add a little bit more color. I'm going to zoom back a bit on this so I get a better sense of how this is actually going to look. Very often when these bricks are made, there's a sag just from the gravity. Right in here you'll see shadows that kind of divide this in half. Now I want to separate out the brick. I'm going to hide the guide for a moment from the grout here. So I'll go in and I'll double click, or I'll go down to my FX. And I'm going to choose, I think I'll use a drop shadow on this. And I'm going to leave it set for opaque. I'm going to set my blend mode for multiply so I get the translucence. And I'm just going to be careful of this distance here. I'm going to put it directly below the brick. So my pattern looks pretty nice when I'm finished. Now I think I probably also want to put a bit of an outer glow, or I might even go with an inner glow on this with a darker value too, just to define that a little bit more. So I'll go ahead and bump the opacity, maybe play with the size here. You know, at this point, if you wanted to, you could play with the colors. So, you know, it's really contingent upon what you want. There we go. Now it's a little too red. I think I'll come back down here. I'm going to click OK. Click OK again. Now, this bevel emboss is a little too intense, so I'll double click on my filters. I'm going to go back in again, and I'm just going to reduce the depth on that to smooth it a bit more than what I have now. All right, so I'm going to merge the beveled layer with the solid layer, which was our original brown. I'm just going to merge those down because what I'd like to do now is put a layer mask in. And I'm going to go in, I'm going to chip away at the edges of this a bit just so that it looks a little bit more organic and not so mechanical. So I'll make sure my brush is 100%. I've got a nice solid edge, and I'm simply going to go in and kind of chip away at these edges a bit. Make sure I'm on my brush. There we go. I'll just zoom back a bit. All right, so I'm going to save. Now, because I merged before, I kind of lost my shadow on my brick, so I'm going to go in and remove it completely and add it again. And this time it'll be a little bit more opaque, so I'll apply my layer mask. Once again, I'll double click and I'll put my drop shadow on. That's working a little bit better. All right, so go ahead and do that. And now I'm going to bring my guides back. Hit Command H. And I'm just going to copy the brick. So I'll hit Command J. So I've got kind of a loose layer there to work with. And I'm going to throw a guide at the center of my document, which is at the 1/2 inch. If you remember, it was 1 inch by 0.75 in height. And now I'm going to go in and just by eye, I'm going to drop a couple of these bricks. And at this point, you really have to use your eye to measure that grout line for the thickness you want. All right, so you can see I'm going to put these up a little bit more, just a little bit higher, so there's a bit of grout at the bottom of my file as well. All right, so now I have to make a selection of this and make a pattern out of it. So I'll go ahead and hit Mark get my marquee. And I'll click and drag. And the thing you have to remember with the pattern tool is that you have to get the selection right the first time. You can't adjust it, otherwise the pattern tool is not available. So I've got the pattern I want now. So I'll go to Edit, and I'm going to go to Define Pattern. No need to name it because it'll be on my menu. And now I'm going to go to my 3D file, and I'm going to open up the layout or the atlas, and you can see there is the pattern that's on there now that I swiped from Adobe Building online and created a pattern much the same way. So I'm going to throw a fresh layer in, and I'm going to make a select. Well, I'm going to just fill a whole document. I'll scale it down, this way I have control over the size of the bricks. So I'll do one of two things. Either I'll go to File, I'll go to Edit Fill. Okay, and I can go in here now, and if I go to my patterns, the most recent pattern will be that brick I made. I'll click OK, and now I can scale this down. All right, so I'm going to scale it down and start to put it in position, and then I'll come back and show you the end results. All right, so what I'm doing now is I'm just cutting up the area that I want to use as the pattern on top of this. You can see I've cut out a piece of that brick pattern. In the other cases, I've simply gone around on another layer, and I've put some dark brown set it multiply in the layer to give it that recessed look. So I'm going to do that with this piece. So in order to do that, I'll zoom in a bit, and I'm going to hold down my Command key, and I'm going to click on that layer to put the selection around the edited piece. Now I've got a layer that I'm putting the dark values on already, and it's set for multiply, and I've got this dark umber brown to kind of match my rest of my palette. So I'll get my brush with a soft edge, and I'll simply go around the perimeter. You can see it does a pretty respectable job. Now as you're working, sometimes the selection can be kind of in the way, so I'm going to hit Command H to hide it so that I can paint without its obstruction. And I'll hit Command S to save. And I'm going to return to my 3D model to see how that looks when it updates. You can see it does a really nice job. Okay, that's pretty much any sort of a pattern you have to create. That would be the way to go about it.